Hey, let's talk about some of the early battles, the American Revolution. We just talked about Lexington and Concord the last time, the first shots of the American Revolution, known as the shot heard around the world. And what we realized is we were now at war with the most powerful empire on earth. If you remember, part of the reason Britain was headed out into Lexington and Concord was to try to find guns and ammunition that the Patriots were stockpiling. Well, they didn't have enough guns and ammunition to wage a war against the most powerful empire on earth. They weren't going to be able to buy it from Britain, the mother country, who they got all their stuff from. No other country at this point wanted to sell us guns and ammunition because that risks going to war with Great Britain, the most powerful empire on the face of the earth. So the only way we could get more is to make it ourselves, which we didn't really have the capacity to do at this point, or we had to steal it. And so, where would we go to steal it? Well, almost all the guns and ammunition and gunpowder that were in the colonies belonged to the British. So, let's look at this fort, Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York. If you look at it, very well fortified. It's got water on almost all sides, really steep hill leading up to it. Not just one stone wall for defense, but two stone walls for defense. The British thought this fort was impenetrable. A lot of these little black dots on the top are cannons. There were over 200 cannons at Fort Ticonderoga and all kinds of stockpiles of muskets, bayonets, swords, gunpowder, lead, anything you need to wage a war. It was in Fort Ticonderoga, and they thought no one would ever take it. Well, that's sometimes the easiest place to take because people get too relaxed. The guy in charge of defending it was a guy named General John Burgoyne. They called him Gentleman Johnny. And the people tasked with taking it were local militia, led by Ethan Allen. And he had a group of soldiers known as the Green Mountain Boys, Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. And another guy you probably know too, but you probably know him for a different reason, Benedict Arnold, who became the greatest traitor ever in American history. Eventually was a very good patriot, or originally was a very good patriot and helped take Fort Ticonderoga. The only way to take it is to come from this wide open space. And what they did is they came in quietly. They came in at night. They surprised the British at Fort Ticonderoga. They didn't defend it with very many people because they didn't think anybody would ever even try to attack it. So it was a real surprise when Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold, the Green Mountain Boys, and part of the Patriot Army show up here. They, I'm sure, killed a few guards, sneak into the fort. It's really not much of a battle. It's a huge American victory. They won it without even firing a shot. They walked into the front gate. They caught John Burgoyne asleep, literally, and Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen captured Fort Ticonderoga. It's not that important of a place. What's important about Fort Ticonderoga is, look again, they get all these cannons and the gunpowder and the lead. The problem is it's in upstate New York and the fighting is happening in Boston, in Massachusetts. It's hundreds of miles away and it's across the mountains. So how are you going to get those guns from Ticonderoga to Boston? Well, you can see a picture here of how they ended up doing it, even in the snow of the mountains in the early spring. This was engineered by a guy named Henry Knox, who would become the first Secretary of War. He was a really important general for George Washington. And before the war, he had absolutely zero experience in fighting. He was a bookkeeper. He owned a bookstore, and that was it. So Henry Knox realized they weren't going to be able to roll these cannons across the mountains in the snow. So he got teams of oxen, put them on sleds, took them apart, and pulled them over that way. Unfortunately, they weren't around by June 17th. They didn't make it to Boston by June 17th when the British attack at Bunker Hill, which really was Breed's Hill. It's a confusing thing. There's two hills right beside each other. The first hill the British stormed was Breed's Hill, but history has changed it to Bunker Hill through time. Historical memory. They've even changed the name of Breed's Hill to Bunker Hill to match the myth. So that's June 17th, 1775. What was so important here is it's the first time the Patriots go toe-to-toe with the most powerful army on earth. in a real battle. Lexington and Concord, that was guerrilla fighting. Ticonderoga, that was a sneak attack. This time, it's the Patriots versus the British, and the British attack uphill. It's one of the cardinal rules of war. You never attack the high ground. You don't charge uphill. It's too easy to defend it. The problem for the Patriots at Bunker Hill is even though they held the better ground, they were almost out of gunpowder. And so they didn't have very many shots. It's an American loss eventually. If we think about the metrics for winning, you think about, do you gain your objective? Yes, the British gained their objective. They took Bunker Hill. Do you drive the enemy off the battlefield? Yes, they do, because that was the objective of that battle. The other one is casualties. Who has more casualties? And in this case, it's actually the British. So it's a victory for the British, but it's not a resounding victory. They actually lost more than they gained, perhaps, because it showed the British, first of all, that the Patriots weren't just going to be a pushover, and it showed the Patriots they could actually stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire on earth. Again, you can see them charging up the hill here. The American commander, Israel Putnam, has this famous quote, "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." The British come charging up the hill, and why do you wait? You wait because you don't have very much gunpowder. You don't have very many shots, and you want to make sure when you shoot, you actually hit somebody. The danger of that is if you don't, or the British keep coming, they're so close that you really can't get away from them. And what the Patriots were really afraid of, you can kind of see them here on the ends of these muskets, the bayonets that the British had. They were brutal with the bayonet. They inflicted a lot of damage. It was a painful, horrible, awful way to die. The Patriots were afraid of that, but they waited and they waited and they waited and they fire at the British, and the British retreat back down the hill. In a normal circumstance, the British would have never attempted the first try up that hill, but they had zero respect for these Patriot soldiers. So they get to the bottom of the hill after they retreat. Normally, again, they would call it off. It's not worth it. They regroup and they charge up the hill again. And the Patriots wait and they wait and they wait and they open fire and they mow the British down, and the British have to retreat back down the hill. Never would they charge up a hill 3 times against the French or the Dutch or the Spanish. They just wouldn't have done it because they had respect for those soldiers. Having no respect for the Patriots, they mount a third charge up that hill. This time the Patriots don't have anything to shoot with, and they had to retreat. So they fall back from Bunker Hill, but if you look at Boston, it really isn't. There's Bunker Hill right there in the middle of the Charlestown Peninsula. Here's Boston proper out here on this peninsula. It really doesn't gain them a lot of ground. And shortly after that, you can read up here in the caption, Henry Knox shows up with those cannons, with that gunpowder, with that lead, and the Patriots put those cannons up on the high ground surrounding Boston Harbor. So they can fire down into Boston all day long. All the British ships that are here in the harbor, they can fire on those British ships from the high ground, and the British can't really fire back. They don't want to attack. They know they can't do that, so they lay siege to Boston. If you read down here in this caption, siege is a kind of warfare that you use against a stronger fortified enemy. What you're trying to do is you starve them out. You surround them. You don't let any supplies in. You don't let them escape. So you're trying to starve them to the point where they have nothing left and they just surrender to you. Well, eventually what happened is the one place the Patriots couldn't defend was the outlet from Boston Harbor to the Atlantic Ocean. So finally, after a long siege of 1775 through 1776, over the winter, the British finally packed their people up out of Boston, and they head out of Boston Harbor. So the Patriots take Boston because of those cannons that came from Ticonderoga. Without those cannons and that gunpowder and lead, they probably wouldn't have been able to take Boston. The British move up to Canada, which they still hold after the French and Indian War, and they regroup. And they're going to come back again, and it's not going to be pretty. They're going to come to New York. and Washington will finally be in charge there. I did skip a slide back here. Politically, what's happening in May of 1775, the Second Continental Congress has met. They're trying to unite the 13 colonies as one. Benjamin Franklin is a delegate there, Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock. And this is where, number one, they send a last ditch attempt at peace to the king. It's called the Olive Branch Petition. And he denied it. I don't even know if he read it. King George and his dad and his grandpa are part of a line in the English kings called the Hanoverian kings. Hanover's a region of Germany. Actually, King George III was the first of the King Georges who could speak English. The other two spoke only German. And so they have really strong ties to Germany. What he did in response to the Olive Branch Petition is he hires mercenary soldiers that fight for money. They don't have a cause. They just fight for money. And these soldiers he hired were called Hessians. They were from a region of Germany called Hesse. And so he pulls his political ties to Germany to gather up mercenary troops to send over to America. So it's not just British troops who are fighting against the Patriots. It's this hired help. And the Hessians are even more brutal than the British. The British are great fighters, but they're bound by rules of war. The Hessians just kind of do their own thing. And we're going to talk about some of the things they did with bayonets, and they also went into battle with battle axes, and they chopped people up. They were not the people you wanted to meet on a battlefield, for sure. What else did they do in the Second Continental Congress? They decide that as a united new country, even though they haven't declared independence yet, look at that date, it's still over a year before July 4th, 1776. They're going to print money. They're going to create a post office. They're going to set up communication committees. They're going to form an army, and they appointed someone, the leader of that army. It was George Washington. He showed up at the Second Continental Congress in his military uniform, kind of lobbying for himself to become the general. So those are the first battles. Lexington and Concord, Patriot victory. We form an army. It's not a great army. It's not all connected yet. Ticonderoga, American victory. By sneak attack, but American victory. And then Bunker Hill, British victory, but British victory that had a lot of casualties for the British. They lost about 1,000 men, and the Patriots lost under 100. So anytime you're in a battle like that, even though you take the ground and you gain your objective, it's probably not the best victory for you to lose that many people. Siege of Boston, they drive the British out, and the British will come back to New York. Next time, we'll talk about the Declaration of Independence. Thanks.